The first 3 days after she emailed me, I felt like I was floating. Not walking, not sitting, not really existing in the normal sense. Just floating in this strange, warm fog of disbelief and hope. I hadn't expected to hear from her again. Not after how things ended. Not after the silence that followed. 6 months of nothing. Not even a "hey, how are you doing?" And then suddenly, on my birthday, there it was. Her name lighting up my inbox like a ghost that remembered how to breathe. I swear my hands shook when I saw it. I didn't even open it right away. I stared at the subject line. Simple, almost polite. Happy birthday. 2 words that hit me harder than any argument. Harder than the day she walked out. For a long minute, I just sat there staring. The screen glowed faintly in the dim light of my room. I could hear the ticking of the clock on my wall, loud and steady, as if the world was waiting for me to decide whether to open it or not. Part of me didn't want to. I'd spent 6 months trying to rebuild myself after she left. 6 months of trying to convince my mind that she was gone for good, that I didn't need her anymore, that I could eat, sleep, and function without wondering what she was doing. And now, all of that came crashing back in one single notification. When I finally clicked it open, I had to close my eyes for a second. I read her words slowly, my chest tightening with each line. It wasn't a long message, just a few sentences. She said she'd been thinking about me, that she hoped I was doing well, that she knew it was my birthday, and couldn't just let it pass without saying something. That was all. No, I miss you. No, can we talk? Just, happy birthday. And yet, it meant everything. The next 3 days, I felt alive in a way I hadn't for months. I smiled at strangers, took longer walks, I even slept better. It's crazy how one tiny email can make your brain believe things are okay again, that maybe she misses you, that maybe she's thinking about you the way you think about her at 2 p.m., that maybe, just maybe, she wants to start over. Of course. My friends told me not to read into it, but they don't know what it feels like to have someone you loved for 6 years suddenly appear again. They don't know how that hope feels like. Oxygen when you've been suffocating in silence. Wrote back 2 hours later, because I didn't want to seem too eager, even though I'd already typed and deleted 5 drafts in those 2 hours. I thanked her for remembering my birthday. I told her I was doing okay. I asked if she'd be open to staying in touch. Nothing intense. Just the occasional email, no calls, no texts, no social media, just small check-ins every few months. When I hit send, I felt like I'd done something brave, something adult, something healing. But healing isn't linear. Sometimes it's a trap disguised as progress. The first day after her reply came in, I thought, maybe this could actually work. She agreed to the distant contact, said it sounded nice. Her tone was warm but guarded, like someone testing the water before diving in. But underneath my calm response, a storm was already forming. Because while she could move on casually, typing her words like it was just another friendly email, I was spiraling. I started rereading our old conversations, scrolling through photos I swore I'd deleted, listening to the playlist we used to fall asleep to. I told myself it was just nostalgia, but it wasn't. It was obsession creeping back in, disguised as closure. We were together for 6 years. That's not something you can just pack away in a digital folder labeled past. 6 years of shared breakfasts, road trips, arguments, makeups, birthdays, and lazy Sundays. 6 years of inside jokes and quiet routines. The way she'd hum in the shower, the way she'd tug my sleeve when she wanted attention, the way she'd smile with her whole face when she found something funny. And then one day she was gone. No big fight. No betrayal, just gone. She said she needed space, and I respected that, but I never really understood why. She told me she felt different, that something in her had changed, that she didn't feel the same way anymore. You can't argue with that. You can't negotiate feelings. So I let her go. And then I spent the next 6 months trying to survive the silence. Before her email, I had been trying to focus on staying sober. That's something not many people know about me. I've struggled with addiction, not the kind that gets plastered on headlines, but quiet, lonely addiction. I'd managed to stay clean, but it was hard, especially after she left. When some of my old friends started doing coke, I knew I couldn't be around them anymore. I cut them off. It wasn't easy. I lost my social circle overnight, but I had to protect myself. And even though it left me lonelier than ever, I was proud of that choice. So when she emailed me, it felt like the universe rewarding me. Like, hey, you've been strong. Now here's a little light. Except it wasn't light. It was a spark that set off every memory I'd buried. The days after that were a blur of contradictions. One moment, I felt euphoric, like she still cared. The next, I felt sick. Literally sick. I couldn't eat properly. Every meal felt heavy in my stomach. At first, I thought it was nerves or excitement, but by the third day, I realized it wasn't that simple. I wasn't just nervous. I was falling apart again. My hands would tremble when I tried to make breakfast. I'd stare at my food for minutes, unable to take a bite. The smell of coffee made my stomach turn. It's like my body was rejecting reality. I kept telling myself, don't email her again. Don't say too much, but the urge to talk, to explain, to fix something that was already broken, it was overwhelming. Wanted to ask her why she changed, why she stopped talking, why she couldn't. Just let me say goodbye properly when she left. But every time I started typing, my fingers froze over the keyboard. Because what if she didn't answer? Or worse, what if she did, but only out of pity? So instead, I swallowed my questions, my pain, my confusion, and it started to eat away at me. By the end of the week, the excitement had turned into dread. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, sometimes happy, sometimes cold, sometimes walking away. I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, mouth dry. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't live like this, trapped between the past and the illusion of hope. So I decided to write her one last email. Not to ask for anything, not to rekindle anything, just to let go. I spent hours on it. I told her I had loved her, that she had been the most important part of my life for a long time. I told her I respected her choice to leave, that I understood, even if it still hurt. I thanked her for being a good person, for the good years, but I also told her I couldn't pretend anymore, that staying in touch was reopening wounds I was trying to heal, that I needed space to finally let go. I left out the part about being sick, about not being able to eat, about crying in the dark while pretending to be fine around my family. I just wished her. Well, then I hit send, and the moment I did, I felt both relief and panic. Because endings never feel clean, even when you try to make them poetic. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her reading it, how she'd react, what she'd feel. Would she care? Would she write back? Or would she just delete it and move on with her life? It's been 5 days since then. I haven't heard from her. I keep refreshing my inbox like a fool. And every time there's nothing, I feel this mix of relief and despair. I know I did the right thing, but it doesn't feel right. It feels like I've lost her twice. The first few days after I sent that last email, I thought I'd feel peace. That's what closure is supposed to do, right? You say what's on your chest, you hit send, and somehow, the pain dissolves into something cleaner. But that's not what happened. Instead, it felt like I'd ripped open a wound that hadn't even scabbed properly. I woke up the next morning with that same sick feeling in my gut. I couldn't eat, couldn't even sip coffee. The thought of food made me nauseous. I'd sit at the table, staring at a bowl of oatmeal until it turned cold and sticky, like the hours themselves were congealing around me. I told myself, it's just stress. It'll pass, but deep down, I knew this wasn't just about her. It was about everything. Every unspoken word, every unsent message, every what if that had been building up since the day she left. Nights were the worst. You know that heavy silence that fills your room after midnight? It's not just quiet. It's alive. It hums against your ears. It presses down on your chest. And in that silence, I could hear her voice. Not literally, but in the way memories replay like broken audio. Her laugh echoing, her soft tone when she'd say my name, the way she'd sigh when something was funny but not enough to laugh at. I'd lie there and whisper things I should have said back then. I miss you. I'm sorry. Please, just tell me what changed. But there was no reply. Just the sound of my ceiling fan spinning, slicing through the air like a clock marking time I couldn't get back. I started avoiding my friends. They'd invite me out, movie nights, cheap dinners, late-night drives, but I couldn't bring myself to go. They didn't understand what I was feeling. To them, it was simple. She's your ex. She moved on. You should too. But grief doesn't have an expiration date, and heartbreak isn't just sadness. It's a kind of identity crisis. You spend years building your world around someone, and when they leave, the map in your head no longer makes sense. I didn't know who I was without her. Not really. So I stayed home. Sat on my bed, scrolling through old photos, not even to torture myself, just to remember that it had been real. Some nights I'd walk. No destination. Just the quiet streets and the sound of my footsteps. There's something about walking alone at night that makes emotions louder. The way streetlights flicker, the chill in the air, the smell of damp concrete. Everything feels sharper, like the world is breathing beside you. I'd pass houses with warm light spilling from their windows, families laughing, couples sitting together, shadows dancing against the curtains, and I'd think, that used to be me. 6 months ago, I had that. Now, I was just another ghost walking through the city, pretending I didn't care. Sometimes I'd catch myself composing messages to her in my head, not to send, just to think through. Things like, do you ever think of me when it rains? Do you remember that night by the river? Do you ever regret how cold things got at the end? I'd imagine her answers, gentle but distant, like someone humoring an old friend. And even in my fantasies, she was slipping away from me. That's when I realized I wasn't just missing her, I was addicted to her. Not in a romanticized, poetic way, but in the same way I used to crave substances I swore I'd never touch again. She was my drug, her silence, my withdrawal. It scared me how similar it felt, the shaking hands, the racing thoughts, the way my appetite vanished. When I quit before, I thought I'd learned what rock bottom felt like, but this was different. This was emotional detox, and there was no rehab for it. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, heart pounding. Sometimes I'd throw up nothing but bile because my stomach was empty. Then I'd sit on the floor, staring at the wall, too tired to move. That's when I started writing in a notebook. Not journaling, exactly, more like trying to extract the poison. Each entry started the same way, Danian without her, and under it, I'd write every thought I couldn't say out loud. Some pages were angry, some were desperate, some were just blank, because words couldn't even touch the ache I felt. It's strange how your brain tricks you into thinking suffering has meaning, like maybe if I hurt enough, she'd somehow feel it and reach out. Like maybe pain was a form of communication between us. But pain doesn't travel. It just stays, stuck in your body, growing heavier every day. I'd see her face in strangers. Once. At a grocery store, I actually followed someone because from behind, she had the same hair, the same posture. My stomach dropped when she turned around, and I realized it wasn't her. But for a split second, my heart had leapt. That's the cruel thing about hope. It survives even when it shouldn't. Then came the dreams. They weren't always nightmares. Sometimes they were just twisted versions of reality. We'd be together again, cooking breakfast, laughing, and then suddenly, the scene would shift. Her smile would fade. She'd walk away, and I'd wake up with my heart hammering, my throat dry. Other nights I'd dream of her ignoring me, standing right in front of me, looking through me like I didn't exist. Those dreams hurt more than the nightmares, because they felt possible. My mom noticed something was off. She'd ask, "Are you okay?" And I'd lie, like always. Just tired. Didn't sleep well. She'd nod, pretending to believe me. But I could see the worry in her eyes when I pushed food around my plate instead of eating. She didn't know that my body had started rejecting anything solid. That my chest felt like it was full of stones. At night, when the house was quiet, I'd sit outside on the back steps and stare at the sky. Sometimes I'd whisper her name just to hear it. It felt ridiculous, a grown man whispering into the night like a lost child. But somehow it made me feel less alone. It's strange, isn't it? You can go half a year without speaking to someone, but the moment they reach out, it's like the entire timeline collapses. Suddenly, you're right back where you started. Heart racing, breath short, stomach in knots. That's what she did to me. Not out of malice, just existence. And that's what I hated most. That she could exist without me, while I was here falling apart over a few sentences in an email. Don't remember when the sickness started to fade. Not really. It wasn't like flipping a switch. It was slower, quieter than that. One morning, I just noticed I didn't feel like throwing up. I sat at the table with a cup of tea, and for the first time in weeks, I actually finished it. I wish I could say that was the day I stopped missing her. It wasn't. But it was the day I realized missing her didn't have to mean destroying myself. A few days before that, I'd reread the email I'd sent her, the one where I said goodbye. I read it like a stranger would, not as the man who loved her, but as someone trying to understand the story of a person who once did. And what I saw wasn't desperation. It was honesty. It was me, trying to draw a line in a place that had no borders. For months, I thought closure meant getting answers. Now I knew it just meant accepting that you won't. There were nights I still dreamed about her, but they started changing. The nightmares became memories. Quiet, simple moments replayed without pain attached to them. Us on the couch, watching dumb shows. Her laughing because I burnt the pasta again. The way she used to rest her head on my shoulder when she was tired. In the dreams, she didn't leave, but she didn't stay either. She was just there. And somehow, that was enough. It's hard to explain grief when the person you're grieving is still alive. They're out there, somewhere, walking around, eating breakfast, maybe smiling at someone else. And yet to you, they're gone. You can't mourn them the way you'd mourn a death, because people expect you to move on. But moving on isn't forgetting. It's remembering without bleeding. I started walking again. The same streets, the same late-night silence. But this time, I wasn't trying to escape the pain. I was just existing, letting the world feel big again instead of small and suffocating. One night, I stopped at the park we used to go to, the one by the river. It was empty, except for the sound of water rushing past the rocks. The air was cold, sharp against my skin. I sat on the same bench we used to share and closed my eyes. For a moment, I almost imagined her sitting next to me, not like a ghost, just a memory, soft around the edges. And I whispered, "Thank you. Not for leaving, not for the pain, but for everything in between. For teaching me what love can feel like, and what it shouldn't cost." I didn't get a reply to that last email, and I don't think I ever will. But maybe that's the point. Maybe some stories don't need an ending, just an understanding. She's somewhere out there living her life, and I'm here learning how to live mine again. We both existed in each other's worlds for 6 years, and then we didn't. That doesn't make it meaningless. It just makes it human. There's this moment every morning now, right after I wake up, before my thoughts start racing, where everything feels still. I breathe, and it doesn't hurt. I make breakfast and I can eat it. I walk outside, and I notice how the air smells like rain. I think that's what healing really is. Not a grand revelation, not some movie moment where you suddenly stop caring, but a collection of small, quiet victories that build a life again. I still think of her sometimes, not with anger, not even with sadness, just with acceptance. Because maybe some people aren't meant to stay. They're meant to shake you, break you, and then leave you with pieces you'll eventually build something better from. Sometimes I wonder if she ever thinks of me, if she ever rereads my email the way I once reread hers. But even if she doesn't, even if I've become nothing more than a faint thought in her past, that's okay, because I'm still here, still breathing, still learning to eat, laugh, and live again. It's strange. The girl who once took away my appetite for life somehow became the reason I learned to crave it again. So no, I don't hate her. I don't wish she'd come back. I just hope she's okay. And for the first time in a long time, I can say, so am I.